how many TikTok followers do you have? 20 million?
53 million. I was making money on YouTube. It was being taken from a manager who knew that I didn't know. I was making like $3,000 a video, and I was receiving probably $100 out of that.
Shut the fuck up.
That was for like a good year and a half. I found the right people eventually, and I'm glad that I had those experiences and found the right people early in my career, and I started so young.
You feel like you've avoided with your success, like fucking up your life? Hi everyone, welcome back to a new episode of Dare to Be Fearless. Very excited because this week I am in Lisbon for Web Summit, and I've actually never come to Web Summit before, but I've been to pretty much all of the other ones, including, if you don't know, South by Southwest, which is coming up in June in London. So that is the first South by Southwest, and I will be speaking at that. I think it's the first week of June. And so I talk a lot about helping a lot of you guys figure out what you want to do for a career, as well as how to put yourself in front of new people or cold call and cold email. So if you are looking for that kind of opportunity, that is something I would definitely say would be to reach out or submit a talk idea to South by, because I know that they're really eager to bring the same vibe that it is in Austin, Texas to London. So before I introduce today's guest, I just want to do a quick shout out to Chief Swag. I posted an episode 2 weeks ago, I think, about how the company is doing. So of course, if you want to find out more about how to get all of your own customized gear, head to the show notes, as well as follow the show on social media, which is at Dare to Be Fearless with the number 2 and at Alexa_Curtis. So I started my blog back in 2011, and it's now 2024, about to be 2025. And so from being in the entertainment world for so many years and up to the Disney show, and now I have seen hundreds of influencers, content creators, I think honestly wannabe people who try and break into this industry, and it's very hard to maintain a career if you go into this with either the wrong intentions and or you just give up, because at the end of the day, to build a brand or a fan base, you have to stay engaged, and to be honest, you have to stay on top of it 24/7. And over 150 plus interviews that I've done over the years with either celebrities or exited founders, the number one thing that I find in common with all of them is obviously resilience, but it's just this ability to reinvent yourself if you feel like something is becoming outdated or like you're running out of things to talk about. And so I am thrilled today to have Loren Gray in the studio.
Yay.
She was an OG Musical.ly person from what year?
Oh, I don't know what year.
2013.
So what would that be? 2016?
I'm so bad at math.
Me too.
Back in the day, like when Vine was a thing. And now you just did your first movie on Netflix called Incoming, which is huge.
Thank you.
I'm so excited because like I just said, I've talked to so many people and I can always spot, I feel like, talent who it makes sense that they've been able to build and scale like a personal brand or their social media presence online. And so I have so many questions for you. But what do you think right now is the biggest difference in this industry and economy in comparison to when you started, when you were so young?
I love this question. And it's a positive for me, but I've seen this sort of going from this huge separation between traditional media and digital media to now the two sort of blending, the lines are getting blurred, and people are more multifaceted. The public, the industry is more accepting of people who are interested in doing acting and singing and also, pursuing a career on social media. So that's where I've seen things change the most. I think, when it comes to social media, things are always evolving. There's like this pendulum that swings and people are always interested in longer form, now shorter form, now more production, now less production. And that's something that sort of changes, I feel, on a weekly, yearly basis. But overall, from beginning to now, that's something that I've noticed in the industry as a whole.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Philly.
So tell me about growing up on the East Coast, and you expected that you would go into something like this or no?
No, I say Philly. I'm not from Philly. I'm from like the suburbs of Philadelphia, and I had a very normal life. My parents have very normal careers. My dad's a biologist. My mom was a hairstylist and worked as a bank teller, and she did all kinds of things. But I was always interested in entertainment. I took acting classes when I was 11, 12 years old, before any of the social media stuff was even a thought in my head. Not because I wanted to do it professionally necessarily, but it was just something I was interested in. My mom would take me up there and I would do my classes. Then I signed as a model right before I started social media to women in New York City, and I was the youngest person they had ever signed, and that was a huge deal. And I thought that was it. Like I thought that was the big moment, and then all of the social media stuff sort of unfolded really quickly and took my attention elsewhere. And from there, a lot of things have happened. But yeah, that's where I started.
Were you the type of kid in school who got like straight A's, or were you just not that? Oh, so you're very smart.
Very much an overachiever.
Okay.
In college, 4.0, have never gotten anything below an A. If there's extra credit, I'm doing it. And that's the way I've always operated. I don't think I've ever had a bad grade in my life. And if I have, then it was probably the worst day ever.
It's so sick that you're in college, because I was saying to you like before this, you don't need to, right? I think people nowadays, they think that content creation or just starting and going viral can allow you to have this insane like life that's filled with money and success. But the way that you started your career and like built it up to now versus someone nowadays just going viral, there is so much content out there. And so it scares me sometimes when people are like, oh, I'm just going to pursue this and like skip everything and not have any savings, because it's just like the wild, wild west.
Yep.
So when you were starting on Musical.ly, what is this platform for people who don't know?
It was, at that time, it was mostly just lip syncing videos. There was some comedy, but it was always with some sort of music. There was never any like speaking to the camera like there is with TikTok now. There was no vlog style content. All of that was exclusive to, Snapchat, YouTube. None of that existed on Musical.ly. So after Musical.ly became TikTok, there was a huge rebrand and a lot of things changed, and the app is still evolving. But at that time, those were the very early stages, and I don't think they had any idea what it was going to turn into, and I didn't either.
You had an iPhone then, right?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, I think so. I might have had an iPod Touch.
Okay. Oh my God,
or like
I love iPod Touch, yeah.
I had one of those. I had an iPad mini.
Okay.
I might have had like a really old iPhone, but it wasn't cute. It wasn't what I have now.
So you're in middle school then when you download this app.
Yeah, it was the summer of 7th grade.
Do you remember that first video? Like, how did you even know what to post?
I didn't. I was just lip syncing to songs that were popular at the time, and my friends were doing it the same way, and we weren't using it as a platform. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember? There was this app, and I'm blanking on the name now.
Periscope.
Dub Smash.
Oh no, I remember it.
It was just music, and you would make your video, but then the video didn't exist in the platform. You would take it and post it elsewhere. Was the concept for Musical.ly, and that's the way that we were using it. And it wasn't until my videos started performing well that I even noticed at all that it was a platform. So that was a surprise, but I didn't have a strategy. At that time, actually, I think that it would say your video was featured when it was going viral, and it was almost like you were being picked, like the app liked your video, so they would push it out to the algorithm, as opposed to now your algorithm being controlled more by you. There was certain videos that would be like selected, and a lot of my videos were pushed out to the algorithm. Don't know why. I don't know what made me different. I still don't. Maybe because I was really animated, and I always looked a little older. I was 13, but I still had the same makeup that I wear now. So maybe that was shocking also, but I still don't really know.
So do you feel like these kind of platforms, like, were any of your friends, like anyone else you knew, doing the same thing, and you guys were all going viral, or it was just you?
A lot of people at my school were. And then once it started happening for me, it wasn't cool anymore, and everyone stopped. But
why?
It's middle school.
Yeah, it sucks.
Because then it became not cool once my videos started doing well. But there's a lot of people in my school that had like 300,000, 400,000 followers on Musical.ly, which was really strange. But I also say like the most like random people have really great success coming out of my town for some reason.
Okay.
Like Sabrina Carpenter's from my area,
Really?
Taylor Swift's from
Funny.
my area.
Okay.
So like super random place that a lot of people are from. I don't know what's in the water, but yeah, it was a popular thing at school.
Yeah.
And, around.
St. Louis, Missouri is also like that. Carly Kloss, the model, she's from there. Derek Blasberg.
Oh, really?
They have a big talent management agency there called Mother Models. That's not what you were signed to though, right?
No,
you were with Woman. Yeah, and they've like done basically like all of the big models from like the Midwest.
Yeah, no, because like my that part of my life and the social media stuff was so separate. Like the modeling, all that didn't help at all with the social media. That was completely random. So, I mean, I don't know how it worked for like Taylor Swift and Sabrina Carpenter. I'm sure that they're doing their thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's like a random place for people to come from.
With the modeling contract, so did they scout you or did you submit photos and whatnot?
I had a mother agent that I signed to in Philly. And he took me into the agencies in New York. And from there, it's all kind of foggy, honestly, because I was so young. I don't really remember how it all went down. But after I signed that contract, then I started the social media. And they didn't really know what to do because they're, again, used to the traditional fashion industry. And I was also signed to innovative artists after I started social media, but they were also more traditional. So there was a lot of instances throughout my career where I was being managed by people who didn't have focus on digital media. So it was a little difficult for us to connect and work well together. Eventually I found that, and I've been with my team that I have now for, 4 or 5 years. And that's what they specialize in. But that was really difficult because they didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah, well, it's hard because especially if you are above the age of 35, right? Like people who are above that age, and that's most of the managers and agents from those more traditional kind of places. Even when I was at Disney, I mean, all the executives are like 50, right? You didn't grow up with this form of media. So I feel like some of those people are trying to adjust to how this is. But like the best person who knows is you.
Yeah. I think I did a pretty good job. I mean, I found the right people eventually, and I'm glad that I had those experiences and found the right people early in my career. And I started so young that I had the opportunity to make those mistakes that sort of everyone goes through, whether that be with the record deal or with management or just all of the back-end industry situations. I'm glad I had those experiences to be in the situation that I'm in now.
It's also really interesting because so many people who are in that world or in the industry of media and are your age, because you're 22. And so, I mean, you've been doing this since you were 13, you said, right? But there's two paths you could go down, right? I mean, you can end up like the rogue, like ex, Hollywood person, because it's a lot. It's like a huge amount of pressure and responsibility. So how do you feel like you've avoided with your success, like fucking up your life?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of things that you have access to when you're a part of young Hollywood, and that's something that you see a lot. I've never been interested in anything that was bad for me. I've dated shitty people and I've had shitty experiences there, but when it comes to things that could really mess you up, I wasn't interested in partying really. I've always been very regimented, I just wanted to do as much as I can with what little I had. And my parents also made a lot of sacrifices, so that's something that I'm not blind to. My mom quit her job and moved to California with me. That was a huge sacrifice. My dad stayed by himself for 3 years on the East Coast, and that's something that I was very aware of and something that I didn't want. I wanted to take the advantage of it to the utmost, and I think I'm still trying to do that, but there's a lot of things that can get in the way.
You have siblings or no?
I have an older sister.
Okay. Where was she then when you were moving to LA?
She's 8 years older than me. So she was already married. She was having kids.
Yeah.
I mean, she was on her way to having kids, but I think she was married by that point. My sister and I could not be more different. My sister, has her kids and she has her life and she's very happy. And I wanted the opposite. So eventually, one day, but not yet.
It's very inspiring. I told you that you met your current boyfriend on Raya, because I said I tried it for years and I had no luck.
Well,
it's always people like you who go in one swipe and they're like, oh, okay, this is it, I'm done.
No, I don't think that's true, because I've also had a lot of experience outside of anything like that. That was not great. Yeah. So it's taken a minute for sure, but we're here.
So those first 3 years when you're in LA, you then ended up staying after that, or what kind of came to fruition in terms of your career? Because I'm assuming you get off the plane in LA and you've built this platform at the time on Musical.ly, but none of these other apps were out there. Like there was no TikTok, right, at this time?
TikTok didn't turn into TikTok until I was like 17,
Okay.
I want to say. I could have that wrong, but there was a lot of options. I mean, I was doing YouTube at the time, Snapchat, Instagram. Musical.ly was still a thing. And during the transition between Musical.ly and TikTok, it sort of had this lull period where no one really knew what was going on with the app. No one really knew what they were supposed to be posting. So I kind of stopped for like not a full year, but close to. And then it sort of picked back up. People were figuring out what the new algorithm was turning into, and I got back into it and sort of learned how to navigate it. But it was always kind of there. I mean, outside of that, Instagram was probably the biggest thing, but it was always there.
Did all of those followers from Musical.ly go over to Instagram? Because I find a lot of times creators will say like the people they have on TikTok are different than they have on Instagram or YouTube or whatnot.
I think there's some overlap, but it's not all of it. And I think there are audiences that are exclusive to Instagram. But I do definitely see overlap, especially with the fans that are the most engaged across platforms.
I'm curious how it started with monetizing it. Because in that first phase of like Musical.ly, I mean, that was like that was after Vine or before Vine, if you remember that.
Musical.ly was after Vine.
It was after.
There was a little bit of overlap, but Vine shut down pretty much right after Musical.ly became a thing.
Why did you not start on Vine?
I was too young.
Okay.
I watched Vine, but I never saw being an influencer as something that I would ever do or something I was interested in or something that I saw as a career. I watched influencers, I guess. I watched creators. I watched PewDiePie. I watched Jenna Marbles, all those like OG YouTubers. I wasn't super into Vine, but I didn't see it as that was their job. I just saw it as something that they were doing because they enjoyed it. And I didn't know the first thing about doing that. Didn't think I had the personality for it, or didn't think I wanted to do it. And then once it happened, I loved it because I was, homeschooled at the time. I didn't have a lot of friends, and this community came out of nowhere, and everyone cared about me for the first time. And obviously my family did too. Yeah. But outside of that, I didn't have much. Yeah. So it was exciting, and I learned how to do it. I picked it up. I watched videos on how to make YouTube videos and just sort of picked it up from there. But monetization, so my first brand deal ever was for Android. And my parents had no idea that this was something, just like me, they didn't know it was something that you could monetize. So I came to them and I was like, Android wants to pay me. I don't even remember how much. It was like
Did they email you? Did they DM you?
Yeah, they emailed me. I was like, Android wants to pay me like a couple $100 to post this video. And my parents were like, what? Yeah. So after that, my mom was like, okay, this is getting to be bigger than we thought, because they thought it was just a hobby, and now it's turning into a business. So my mom started paying attention to, she already was paying attention to what I was posting, but even more so, and paying attention to what was coming in until it got sort of out of her realm of knowledge. And then we started bringing in, agents and different people to try. But yeah, that was my first deal. And I had obviously the brand deals built from there. I was making money on YouTube. It was being taken from a manager who knew that I didn't know. No. Knew that I didn't know that I was monetizing, where I was making like $3,000 a video, and I was receiving probably $100 out of that.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, so that was for like a good year and a half, and I was getting brand deals for like $10,000 and receiving $200. Never got that money. Don't know where it is.
How did you find out that that was happening?
So after the fact, I had spoken to someone who had come into the label, and he's like, oh, I used to bring deals to your manager. And I was like, oh yeah. And he was like, yeah, you were getting good deals. And he was like, I was paying you like $10,000 a post. And I was like, no, I was getting maybe a couple $100 a post. So that's how I put the pieces together on that, which sucks. But again, a learning lesson. I don't know where those people are now. I hope that they're...
Did they find you, or did you go to them and say, do you want to rep me?
Once I started making friends in the industry is when I started meeting more people with a focus on digital media and social media. So once I had friends in the industry who were a little more knowledgeable than I was, I met their people and went that path a few times. Didn't always work out, but it's just like the slow sort of networking of figuring it out.
It's also a very small industry. I think people, if you're outside of entertainment, you think like, wow, there's all these people and all these stars. I mean, everywhere goes to the same places and knows the same people. So whenever I see someone like new on the scene or that I meet, I'm like, you know, don't screw up or say the wrong thing, because if you do that, or even like that agent, right? I'm assuming slowly they probably had other clients who ended up like, if you would tell someone, they would go tell that person like, am I getting screwed out of money and whatnot? I'm wondering, so when you're making videos, because I think a lot of people would be curious. So you said you could make like $3,000 off a YouTube video. How many views do you have to get that?
At that time, the monetization was different. So I was getting between like 1 million and 3 million views. I don't really do YouTube anymore, but at that time, I was getting, it wasn't even a ton of views, but the amount of money was so significant. A, because my content was, it was PG, it wasn't anything, you know, intense. But B, the monetization was just better on YouTube at that time.
And do you think it's changed now for creators?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with how YouTube monetization is anymore. My focus is on TikTok. There's too many platforms, and it's hard. You spread yourself very thin across all platforms, so syndication has become really important to me. But I don't really focus on YouTube as much anymore.
So let's talk about that, because that's also very interesting. Since you started on Musical.ly and then obviously that turned into TikTok, how did you decide to step away from YouTube and then decide what to actually focus on? Is it like simply just what makes you the most money, or is it where you feel like this fan base is the most engaged?
Not necessarily. I mean, my YouTube was so time consuming, and I would spend so much time on YouTube videos that wouldn't go as far as I wanted them to. YouTube is so much more difficult when it comes to algorithm, because if someone's watching, I mean, I know from my own algorithm, if I watch one video, I get 300 of those videos. The discovery for finding new creators is a little more difficult than, say, TikTok or even Instagram with the Explore page. YouTube doesn't have that as much. So I feel like YouTube is also focused more on podcast content now and things like that, where, you know, people aren't making vlogs as much anymore. And that's what I enjoy doing. So there was a lot of changes in the platform and in my interests that I just felt like my time would be spent better elsewhere. I like shorter form content. I like longer form, but it just takes a long time if you don't have an editor and you don't have all of these things. And I like to do it myself. I like to do everything myself. So giving up that control to have someone edit a video is also difficult for me. So there's a lot of I still use it every now and then if I have like an exciting trip and I want to edit something together and put it up, but it's not my focus.
So what out of everything then do you love the most? Because I mean, you have to be in a sense kind of on 24/7, right?
Yeah. I love TikTok. I think I understand it the most. I think that I understand the algorithm the best. I know what works for me. I know what people like to see from me. I also really like Snapchat. I like how personal it is. I like how engaging it is. I also really like the comment sections on TikTok and Snapchat, the replies on Snapchat I really like. I like whatever's feels the most connected. Instagram I like it, but now it just sort of feels like TikTok, which can be difficult as a creator because you want to make different types of content, right? I don't want to just be making short form videos, but that's basically all you're doing now if you're a creator, is these 15 to 1 minute long videos. That's what people want to see. They don't really care about pictures or stories anymore. And Instagram doesn't really focus on those either when it comes to the algorithm. So I like Snapchat because it feels the most personal, and I like TikTok. I like Reels. I'm still trying to understand it and get a good grasp on it and get a grasp on what that audience likes, which takes a lot of trial and error. But yeah, I would say Snapchat, TikTok, working on Reels.
Do you get a lot of or any negative comments on either of them? Because I find TikTok to be like, I like Instagram the most, but I think TikTok is kind of the best in this day and age. But I find the comments on there, like for me, or just random things, have just been so sometimes negative, and I don't find that on Instagram.
That's something I'm used to. I mean, there's always going to be negative comments, and sometimes they're warranted. I mean, sometimes people will let you know when you're doing something that they don't approve of, and you can't make everyone happy. So absolutely. And yes, you're right. But actually, Instagram Reels can be pretty mean. So
do you read them?
Not as much anymore. I'll read some. I don't go through every single one and like bang my head against a wall if someone's not happy. But I've had that so much, especially in the beginning, that I got a lot of those like feelings of being down on myself or feeling, sad and letting it get to me. I got most of those out of the way. Every now and then something will happen, or like just the other day, I had a bad hair day and I went to a premiere and that was all over Twitter. And I knew that I knew that I didn't look the best, and everyone let me know, and I knew that was coming. And that's the sort of thing where I'm just like, yeah, there's nothing I can do about that.
What do people say? I mean, like, just
I don't know because I didn't read it.
A bit about your hair.
Yeah.
Why?
I was wearing like a hairpiece that wasn't blended properly. That was the issue.
Very simple to make people.
And I was in a rush leaving because there was a miscommunication with my hair. Anyway, moral of the story is I was rushed. It was a bad day already, and then that always just like makes it a little worse. And people were telling me, like in real life, like, oh, I saw that people were talking about this, my friends and whatever. So I know, even if I don't want to know, I will know.
Do you still have a lot of friends from when you were growing up, or most of them now are in the industry?
I have one best friend from home, and my other best friend that lives in California. We've been friends since we were 16. She was doing the influencer thing for a while. She now works at my management company. So
cool.
We work together sometimes on stuff for my project. But outside of that, I'm too busy a lot of the time. My other best friend, she's like older. She's a model. She's very she's got it together. And I just feel like everyone right now is in their work mode. Everyone's in their work era, and I kind of love it. So
I feel like you'd have a lot of friends that are older because you're so mature, and I can't usually have a conversation with like a 22-year-old. I mean, sometimes I can, but like most of the time it just feels like a different era. But I mean, you really don't act 22.
Oh, thank you.
So I would assume everyone you hang out with is probably...
I hang out a lot with my parents.
Okay.
I also think that's why I've had such a good experience in the industry. My parents have kept me very grounded, and not that I've ever, flown too close to the sun, but my parents are very much involved, not on the work side of things, but just in my life. And I think that makes such a difference. I look up to them both a lot. They've, I think, raised me pretty well, and they've given me a lot of room to be my own person. And they gave that to me very early, and they trusted me very early to make good decisions with all of the things that I've been given and all the things that I've achieved. So I hang out with them a lot. My friends, some of them are my age, most of them are older, most of them are like late 20s, early 30s. But that's, I don't know, it just works.
But I would assume, that like having had this experience over the years, that it would probably make you much more mature, right? I mean, when you were on YouTube, when that thing was happening with the agent, I mean, you were how old?
14.
So you're 14 and you're basically getting screwed out of money. So you have to learn how to, fix that situation. And that's not something that most 14-year-olds deal with.
Yeah, and I think another thing is I had to learn how to do a couple of things. One being separate work from my personal life. In the beginning, they were one and the same, and that made it very difficult for me to separate who I am online versus who I am as me and my values. And I would just say everything that came to my mind, everything that I felt. I remember when I was 13, my boyfriend broke up with me and started dating this other girl. And I tweeted, and I was like, wow, what a downgrade. Like, too much personal life, too much combined with work. But I think that over time I started to find when I kept certain things private, I was a lot happier. I also found that I had to learn how to say no. In the beginning, I was always yes, I can do it, yes, I'm fine, yes, it's all good. And I also think that that's just a result of being a woman. And there's a lot of times where you feel pressured and you're just like, yes, I will do it, I will get it done, and I have to prove myself to these people who are usually men. Especially in the music industry, I had that experience. No one trusted my ability to market when that was all I'd done was market myself for the past, 3 or 4 years, and they wanted to take my whole identity in a different direction. That was very difficult for me, but there was a lot of moments where I said yes and I shouldn't have because it wasn't me. So over time, I learned how to say no, and that's sort of when my relationship with the record label fell apart because it was once I learned how to say no, it was a lot of no's. And I also think that's important to having a career with longevity, because had I said yes to half the things that have been presented to me, I could be sitting in a completely different place doing something completely opposite from what I'm doing now. So again, another experience I'm glad I had early.
That's so interesting, because it's just so not what someone would experience in comparison as well to say you're like a child actor, right? And a lot of times you have stage parents, and that's very different than from you, because it's like your parents had to get, like they had to learn. They weren't really probably like living vicariously through you, whereas a lot of like young actors' parents just do.
Yeah. I mean, my parents thought it was cool. My dad's like, both my parents still think it's cool when I'm, coming out here and speaking at Web Summit, or when I was filming my movie. Like, they think it's awesome. Are they involved? Are they telling me what to do, what to post, what to say? Never. This has all been very much at one point, my mom was like, when Musical.ly was becoming TikTok, my mom was like, well, you should probably stop doing it then if no one's doing it, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, no. And sure enough, it evolved into this much bigger thing. But there was a lot of times like that where, again, I had to say, no, I'm doing it this way because this is what my instinct is telling me. Not that my mom was like, you need to quit. She's like, well, if everyone else is quitting.
Yeah.
But they had an eye on everything. My mom did a great job of managing things to the best of her abilities, especially because I was underage. And that's another thing that I bring up to people a lot. It's like a lot of people ask about my parents and, oh, how did your parents feel? My mom was trying to like parent someone who's now paying rent, and I have my own car, and I have all of these things that I was not supposed to have at that age. So how do you parent someone in that situation? And that, now that I'm a little older, looking back, now that we've lived apart for a long time, I can imagine how difficult that must have been for her. And even my dad getting phone calls, Lauren's doing this, and they're trying to parent, but it's this situation that none of us expected. But I'm grateful for them, and they tried really, really hard to understand and to make sure that I didn't end up in situations that I sometimes did end up in, but they navigated it as well as they could.
I think a lot of times some people are just born as well with like a natural gut intuition of things that are meant to be happening, or like what's right versus wrong. And it seems like you would maybe be someone who wouldn't do something just because everyone else was doing it, even if you felt like that would maybe help your career, etc. I mean, you said about sometimes figuring out how to post and what not to post. Have you had times where you're like, this was just too much to post online, or this was not the right thing, or it was too personal about my life? And have you ever then on the other side felt like just really burnt out from posting?
All of the time, to both of those questions, because there's been times, I remember I filmed my wisdom teeth removal. I had not the actual surgery, but my friend filmed me after, and I was, on all the drugs that you're on after wisdom teeth, whatever. And I edited it all together, and I watched it back, and I was like, the world cannot see this. This is bordering on sad, and no one needs to see this. And there's been a few times where there's been, people want me to post this, or someone wants to see this, and it's just not something I'm comfortable with, or something that I think the world needs to see. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at discerning what I want to put out. Burning out, yes, I feel like every week. Especially when I was 16, 17, I was so regimented. I would wake up, I would go to the gym, I would do my hair, I would do my makeup, and I would sit in front of my little vanity mirror and make videos all day. That's all I did, was watch videos, make videos, watch videos, make videos. And then COVID happened, and when COVID happened, the actual ability to go out was taken away. I was like, man, this is really all I do. I need to find other things to do. So I feel like if I hadn't done that and I hadn't found hobbies outside of social media, I don't know if I'd still be able to do it, because that was such a routine, and it sucked the life out of everything I was doing. It ruined the passion that I had for it, and I had to build that back.
Oh, that's good to hear someone say, because I think a lot of people expect that it's the most fun job in the world, but
I hate looking at myself.
Yeah. Why?
I look at myself all the time.
Yeah.
My entire job is looking at myself and making sure that I'm likable, and that people are going to like the way that I look. People are going to like the way that I sound and what I have to say and what I'm doing, and being interesting. And I don't take pictures if I don't have to, because I see myself every day, and it's so, my job is so self-centric that it's exhausting. Like, my own face is exhausting to me.
You remind me of myself, because that's how I was when I was like 14, 15, and I had started this blog and I was doing online high school. I mean, it was like wake up, work out, and it's like the other kids are just being normal at school. And when people are like, how do you explain success? And I remember those like early days. And I just think some people are naturally I don't even think hustle is the right word. You just have a natural intuition in business of just like, you know, you're going to get further if you put more work in, versus if you had just sat on all these followers and like, you know, you probably would have made money, but would you have been able to have this kind of longevity as a brand? I don't know, because people now have millions of followers, and they will probably, 90% of them maybe be forgotten because they don't put in that work ethic. What advice would you give to someone who right now looks at you and like how many TikTok followers do you have? 20 million?
Like 53 million.
That's insane. Like, what do you say to someone, how to get that? Like, should they do this?
I think you have to go into it with the right intentions. My advice used to be, just be consistent and do something you love. And that's also important. But social media is all about community. I think the only reason that I got from point A to point B and then point B to point C is because I was invested first in the community. That's what I loved about it before money even got involved. I was looking for that. I needed that support. I was giving that support, and I built an audience that I really, really loved and cared about. And it's very difficult to monetize and maintain an audience if you're not passionate about it. And I think I get a lot of questions like, well, how do I become a big creator? And that's what I want to do. You have to really love it, and you have to love the people. And it's a lot of talking to people and interacting with people. That's what social media is. So if you can't do that, then you should do something else, because it's all about the fans. And it sounds really corny when I'm saying it, but it's true, because if you don't love the people that are supporting you, it falls apart so quickly. And I feel like it works like that in any brand, right? If you're creating a product, but you don't have the consumers in mind, that product is not going to perform well, because the consumers don't feel heard. They're not buying into that product. So I think that, combined with the consistency, because not everything is going to hit, not everything is going to be, 1 million, 2 million, 10 million views. Finding your niche, finding what works for you, and finding ways to stay passionate, and finding new ways to look at things, new ways to present your content. Over time, I've gone from 15-second lip sync videos to 20-minute vlogs to now like 15 to a minute long vlogs or makeup videos or whatever's happening at that time. So you have to be quick on your feet. And I think overall you just have to really love it.
Is that why you started acting? Because you were getting more, I don't want to, is bored the right word, but kind of like antsy with just the content?
Not necessarily. Acting was something I was interested in before all of this, and because traditional and digital media were so separated, I didn't think that was going to be an opportunity that would ever arise for me. So once I started social media, I kind of hung up that dream, because I was like, well, this is what I am now. And now that traditional and digital media are sort of blending together, I noticed more opportunities coming from my agency and more self-tapes. And of course, there's always going to be, scripts coming in that are like, we want you to play this part. You're going to play an influencer, and you're going to post this, this, and this. And it's very much like handing you a role to say that you're an actor. It's very transactional, right? Because then the movie, they want you to post the movie to your following. And yeah, there's been a lot of things like that have been presented to me, and I never took them, because if I was going to be in a movie, which was my dream way before all of this, then I wanted someone to think, okay, yeah, she's done this, but she can act. And I wanted to have to work for it. So when I got the script for this movie, I did a self-tape, and they were like, okay, we want to see more. I ended up doing like 6 or 7 self-tapes, and then going in person and doing like 2 auditions with the directors. I did Zoom calls with the directors, and it was very much not handed to me. And so I was really, really grateful that got to be my first project, because I think, again, when it comes to intuition, there was a lot of things that came to me that just didn't feel right. And this felt right. So I don't know how else to put it other than I had to work for this one, and that's what I wanted to do.
As an influencer creator with so many followers and then going into acting, do they ask you, you know, about posting on your social? Is that like something that's required? Do they pay you more or less if you have a massive following? Because I mean, there's even actors who have less followers than you do who are very famous, but like don't have that particular number.
I was probably paid as much, if not less, than the other actors because I'm not an actress.
Yeah.
This is, if you take away the following, I'm essentially like someone who's never acted before, has never done anything, you know, when it comes to film, TV at all. So my rate for that was not high. And I was okay with that because it's the same thing as music, same thing as acting, same thing as social media. You have to build up these different elements of who you are if you're choosing to be multifaceted and go down that path. And for me, I didn't care. They could have paid me nothing and I would have done it because I know what it takes to start from the beginning, and you have to be okay with starting at the beginning. So I was perfectly okay with that. They didn't expect posts. There wasn't like a posting schedule, but naturally I'm going to. Yeah. It's my first movie. I'm excited about it. There was nothing where they were like, oh, you need to post this trailer or this, but I was happy to share it. And everything surrounding that movie in terms of press and things that I was posting were all very natural, all very like organic to me. And I appreciated that experience. My experience in the film industry was so great comparatively to like the music industry, which is most of the time a disaster. So just seeing that I could work in a traditional space and pull it off and be respected for the work that I put in and not what I had already built was really, really great.
Did they give you an acting coach or anything? You had no acting experience?
Well, no, I had worked with acting coaches as a kid, and then leading up to, I had always worked with acting coaches when I was filming self-tapes. But, you know, there's hundreds of people auditioning for every role, probably thousands and whatever. So there was a lot of roles that I auditioned for. You never hear anything, and it's like, well, whatever.
Yeah.
But this one was really special, and I worked really hard. I had like 4 different acting coaches, and I wanted it really bad because I loved the script and I thought it was great. So that all worked out. But yeah, I had worked with people, but again, like no experience in terms of like booking anything.
What was the most unexpected part of filming a movie, and then what was the best and what was the worst part of that?
So I'm a control freak. I like to be in control of everything. And the social media aspect of my job allows me to do that. I, you know, can decide what time I'm waking up, what time things are being posted, what everything looks like. And when you're a part of a film or a TV show, all of that goes out the window. You're contributing to someone else's plan, someone else's project, someone else's vision. And that was a little hard for me at first because I'm like, well, my makeup always looks like this, and now it looks like this, and my hair usually looks like this, and now it's different. So that, I think just not having control over that aspect of things was a little jarring. But over time, that's the part that I started to love because being a part of someone else's project, you're bringing something else to life, and you do your part. It's like working on a team as opposed to like doing an individual sport, you know? So I really ended up enjoying that aspect of things, and I think that's what has drawn me back to film, and that's why I want to do more because I think I can work well in a team, and I enjoyed the camaraderie of it and the friends that I made and the people that I met, and you don't really get that with social media.
No, it's isolating.
It's very isolating. You see people at events, but everyone's like sussing each other out, and people aren't really nice to you until they, you know who you are, and then it's weird. It's all very transactional and awkward, but the film experience was completely different, and I really, really enjoyed that.
No, and especially in LA, it's like extremely hard because it's so fake. I mean, but then on the other hand, it's kind of somewhere someone needs to be, especially in that industry. Mm-hmm. So how have you felt like you've been able to pick and choose who are the right people to hang out with?
I don't think I've always chosen correctly. I think
it's impossible to like do it right all the time.
And I think what I've learned now is sometimes you outgrow people, people change. You can't expect people to have the same interests as they did, 5 years ago. It's always changing, just like I'm always changing. I used to get really down on myself when, I had this girl who's my best friend for years, and she started doing other things. She didn't really want to be my friend anymore, and I was so heartbroken because I was like, oh, it's a me problem. And then I figured out that sometimes you just outgrow people and they outgrow you, and that's okay. Of course, there's been instances of people using me, hanging out with me with ulterior motives, and that's usually pretty obvious when that's happening. So I try to avoid those situations, but you can't always. Had a lot of bad experiences with friends, very backstabbing situations that just shouldn't have happened. But you have those experiences, you figure out who your real friends are, just like any other person in the world. It just takes time to figure out who the real ones are.
Coming from the East Coast to the West Coast as well, I mean, that was a very hard switch for me.
It's so different because my best friend back home, she would do anything for me. When kids were making fun of me at school, she'd go up to them, even when I wasn't there. That is the friendship that I was used to. And when I moved to LA and I realized how transactional things were, and people love you and are your best friend until you aren't providing something anymore. Once I realized that, it was a little harder and my circle got a lot smaller. Yeah, LA is a different, and you know what? It's not everyone. There are a lot of people in LA who are great, and I've met a lot of really interesting, special people who are great friends, but it definitely is a different dynamic.
When I moved there, I think in 2018 or 2019, it was also so different. It was a lot more exclusive. COVID, you would have been too young to be probably going out, or I don't know if you were going out to clubs. Do you know what Hyde is? Mm-hmm. Bootsy Bellows. Okay, so you've been to these places. Mm-hmm. Pre-COVID, these places were great. The parties were awesome. Something happened because all of these places, it's just not as cool in my opinion.
Yeah, I stopped going out. I used to go out and have fun, whatever. And then after I turned 21, I was like,
that's not as fun anymore.
This is not fun anymore.
Because you did it all when you were younger.
And the allure of it is not as exciting when I can walk at the door. When I'm getting stuck in the back, it's way more fun. When I'm walking in the front, it's not that great.
It's not.
So a lot of it just lost its sparkle for me. I love a dive bar now. That's there's a dive bar in the woods near my house in Pennsylvania, and I love it there. That's my jam. But also just the energy of some of these places is so bad. I don't want to go out and have people looking me up and down, and you can just feel that, you're not supposed to be there, or that, the energy is just not good.
That's how I find the difference between New York and LA is I think people on the East Coast are just more real. You don't it's not as sceney. I mean, there are obviously great places and famous people go and whatnot, but I just feel like people from the East Coast have more grit. They don't care as much as people in LA. What are some of your favorite places in LA? What's Loren's guide to LA?
Oh my God. Also, to your point, I think in LA everyone's worried about everyone else. On the East Coast, everyone's worried about themselves.
Yeah.
But I don't even know. I mean,
favorite coffee shop, favorite restaurant.
It's hard because I live in the Valley now, so I'm trying to think from when I was in LA. Catch is my birthday restaurant. That's where I go. That's where I go every year. Their mushroom pasta, they actually just changed the recipe, but their mushroom pasta is my favorite thing in the world. Honestly, most sushi in LA. I also love Katsuya. As Katsuya is, when I'm in LA, that's my go-to. In-N-Out always when I land, whenever I get off a flight, that's the first place I go.
Not Shake Shack for an East Coast girl.
No, I go through phases where I eat the same food over and over and over. Shake Shack was one of those places, and I ruined it for myself. I always say on the West Coast, it's sushi and Mexican food. The West Coast has really good sushi and Mexican food. On the East Coast, it's really good American pub food, barbecue. I think the Chinese food on the East Coast is better. So for me, it's cuisines. I don't go out much. So I can tell you the places I DoorDash from, but that's pretty much it.
I don't know if I know any in the Valley unless it's between Burbank, Studio City, Toluca Lake. I don't know if they DoorDash from those places?
They do, Westlake, Toluca Lake, Westlake Village, and what's the Thousand Oaks.
Okay, that's Calabasas more.
Yeah.
They have a good sugarfish out there.
Oh, I've been there.
Okay.
Yeah. I like Katsuya more.
Really? Yeah. I was there. The place that I have in LA is 10 minutes from the one in Hollywood.
Okay.
But I don't know. They have a good happy hour. It's exceptionally cheap and compared to their normal prices. So if anyone's watching it is in LA, the Katsuya happy hour.
Yeah, it might be me.
So you have done so much for your age and since you started. So what And what is next for you? How do you even decide in a day what to do?
I don't. Usually, if there's nothing planned, I do whatever I'm feeling. If I want to make content, which most days I do, that's what I do. But I also try to practice other things. I do my vocal lessons, I do my acting lessons, and all those things to work on those skills as well. But hopefully, I've been doing a lot of self-tapes. So hopefully more in the film industry. I'm working on new music. I've been in the studio. I was back in LA for 3 days last week before I came here. On Wednesday, I flew in. Thursday, I had a meeting. Friday, I had something else. And then Saturday, I went to a premiere. And then Sunday, I flew home. And then I flew here on Monday. So that's usually what things look like. So I don't usually get to pick so much. It's like, okay, this is what I'm doing now. But I always just take things as they come. And if something feels right, then that's what I'm going to do. And if there's something I want to do, I'm going to try my best at it and give it my best shot. Same thing with school, same thing with every aspect of my life. So I don't know.
Is there one thing in your career dream that you'd like to do that you haven't done yet?
I don't know. I'd love to tour. I'd love to tour with music. That would be really exciting. I've opened for people, but I would love to do my own tour. I would love to do more films. I really, really enjoyed that process. And outside of that, I like what I'm doing. I like making content, and I like doing everything else, and hopefully it grows and continues to grow. But that's all I can ask for.
Well, you have been such a pleasure to talk to.
Thank you.
Where can everyone find you on social media? You were in this movie. Is there anything else in the future movie-wise that people can see you in as of right now?
Not as of right now. Right now we're back in the auditioning phase, which is
hard.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I'm working on music, so hopefully that'll be sometime-ish soon in the future. But yeah, no, right now I don't even know what all my handles are, but Loren Gray, that's my name.
And I like that it's not Lauren. Like, you have a very unusual spelling for the name Loren.
It's a family name. My grandfather's middle name is Loren. So,
oh, that's why. Okay.
Yeah.
It's very easy.
My great-grandmother's first name is Gray.
Okay.
So my last name's Beach.
It gives me anxiety. Like, sometimes if someone has a really hard name, so if someone has just like a name like yours, I'm like, oh my God, thank God.
Oh, I know. And I grew up with people calling me Loren because there was a girl at another school that had the same name, pronounced it different. So it should be an easy name, but sometimes it's not.
But it's Lauren or Loren?
It's Lauren.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. See,
no, you got it right.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
If I've screwed that up, then like I really have problems. Loren, thank you so much for coming in today. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in to another episode of Dare to be Fearless. Head to the show notes to find out more about Loren's work as well as the show, and I'll see you back next week for a new episode of Dare to be Fearless.